So welcome guys to our beginning of another series of events. There will be uh, a new start sa ating mga events, and this is the first event that we will conduct, and it is serverless contact form with API Gateway and Lambda. Before that, pakilala muna ako and ang partner ko. So I am Raymond Irwin P. Pambuan. Uh, Karamihan naman dito, mga tropa-tropa lang tayo. Pero, for formalities, ayun, I'm Raymond Irwin P. Pampuan, ABS CPE, 4th year, specializing in cybersecurity. And, CK, if gusto mo, ikaw pakilala sa sarili.
Akala ko, ano yun. Sorry. So, hi everyone. I'm Crystal Catherine Ayparungaw, another CPE student and another speaker for today's session. Go, tuloy mo na.
Okay, so nabanggit ko kanina na this will be a series of events. So, mini events lang to, exclusive for the Innovation Office as of now. Uh, so, let's move on to what the future is muna sa ating series of events. So, again, ito nga yung first is the serverless contact form with API Gateway and Lambda. Pero before that, bigyan ko lang kayong gist sa kung anong klaseng events ba to. So, more on hands-on tong mga events na to. A little bit of concept and hands-on. Gaya din mga dati natin events, pero mas magpo-focus to sa mga hands-on and sa far future if kakayanin is magkakaroon ng mga personal projects yung mga members aside pa dun sa innovation office project natin na website. So let's move on to the timeline.
Okay, so today is the first session of our Tech Unlock series. And hindi lang ito yung nag-iisang mini event natin or study session natin or workshop natin. So since this is the first one, we have 4 mini events coming up soon. And ito na yon. Yung second mini event natin or study session natin is get started setting up a relational database in Amazon RDS. The third mini event is CloudWatch and CloudTrail 101, logging and monitoring with AWS. The fourth mini event is Local Stack, AWS made local. And the fifth mini event in this Tech Unlock series is Infrastructure as Code with Terraform, demo with EC2. Okay, so move on na tayo. What are the objectives for today's study sessions? So objective 1, we will introduce AWS API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. The second objective is to set up a serverless backend using API Gateway and Lambda, storing data in DynamoDB. So mamaya yan sa demonstration natin with Mon. And of course, objective 3 is to foster collaboration and knowledge sharing. Next. Okay, move on na tayo. So, as a refresher, nagkaroon tayo ng event dati which is entitled Ready to Serve, Deep Dive into the Waiters of Web Application. This is about API fundamentals and yung speaker doon is si Mark Flores. So as a refresher lang, binagit niya doon na meron tayong front-end, meron din tayong back-end. Pero ano yung nagko-connect sa dalawang yon? Ano yung nagko-connect between front-end and back-end natin? Diyan na raw pumapasok si API or the Application Programming Interface. Next one. Nagbigay din siya ng web application and restaurant analogy natin, which is an analogy to the client-server model. Ano ba yung relationship nila sa isa't isa? So sabi niya, yung web application daw is parang isang restaurant, okay? Yung end user niya is yung mga customers na nasa restaurant na yon. And yung front end natin or the client side is yung dining area. Yung area na to na merong tables, may chairs, may plates, may utensils. This front end or this client side is accessible to its end users or readily available siya at our own disposal. And we also have the back end, which is the server side. Ito naman yung kitchen area or yung back of the house sa isang restaurant. So, sino yung nagiging middleman between the front end or the client side and the back end or the server side? Yung nagiging middleman niya is yung waiters or yung cashiers. So, parang sila yung nagiging API natin. Sila yung nagko-communicate from the dining area papunta sa kitchen area natin. And of course, since we have the middleman, next slide please. Kapag umorder tayo sa isang restaurant, nang hihingi tayo ng request, di ba? Since si API yung cashier natin, si API yung kumukuha ng request galing sa client, papunta sa back of the house or the back end. Okay? Siya yung nagsiserve as the cashier. And kapag nangyari na yung order na yon, binabalik ni back end papunta kay front end yung order na yon, and ang tawag naman doon is yung response. So basically, ganun lang yung client-server model, and nakikita natin dito yung request and response relationship between the client and the server and the API which serves as its middleman. Okay? And to follow that, we have the HTTP methods na rin. So, yung HTTP request na to, may mga klase din kasi yan. And ang examples nito, binanggit ni Sir Mark Flores, is yung get method, post method, put method, and delete method. Hindi lang to yung mga HTTP request methods na meron tayo. Marami pa yung iba, pero ito yung 4 basic operations na related mismo sa CRUD operations. Yung CRUD, C-R-U-D, ang ibig sabihin niya lang, create, read, update, and delete. So, itong get, post, put, and delete, yun na rin mismo yun. Parang iniba lang yung pangalan and mas specific siya sa HTTP request methods natin. Okay? So, next, yung concept ng... Since ang session natin is about a serverless contact form, gist lang to, si Mon yung mag-explain nito later, pero ang gist ng serverless, hindi niya ibig sabihin na hindi tayo gumagamit ng server, okay? Gumagamit pa rin tayo ng server. Pero ang ibig sabihin ng serverless is, hindi na tayo nagmamanage nito. Hindi tayo nagmo-moderate, hindi tayo nagpo-provision nito. Si AWS na yung bahalang magbigay ng services para dito. Ang kailangan lang natin gawin is magbigay ng functions na kailangan. And, ayun. Mag-start muna tayo sa API Gateway natin. Kasi to perform the serverless computing, we need a serverless stack. Ang kailangan dito is isang HTTP gateway service. Back muna. Ang kailangan sa isang serverless stack, kailangan natin ng isang gateway service, isang computing service, tsaka isang database service. So yung gateway service, siya na yung API gateway. We also have the computing service, which is yung Lambda, and later pa yon, and the database service, which is yung DynamoDB. Yun na yung pinaka-serverless stack natin. So now, mag-umpisa tayo sa API Gateway. Anong ginagawa ni API Gateway? Hinahandle niya lang yung HTTP request na nabanggit ko kanina, papunta sa API endpoints, and niraroute niya lang or minamap niya lang to sa correct backends na kailangan niya. Sabi ko nga kanina, ang API is the middleman between the front end and the back end. Yung API Gateway, hindi siya yung API mismo. Siya lang yung AWS Cloud Service na kailangan natin para sa pag-handle ng ganito. Okay? So, yung API Gateway, it sits between the back-end services of our API and the users of our APIs. May dalawang klaseng API na hinahandle to, pero gist lang din to, hindi ko nabibigyan ng super detailed. The first API is the REST API. So, designed lang to para sa request-response interactions or yung CRUD operations na nabanggit ko kanina, which are specific to the get, post, put, and delete HTTP request methods. Meanwhile, we also have the WebSocket API, which enables real-time, two-directional communication between client and server. Ang ibig sabihin lang ng WebSocket API is required siya or bagay siya, designed siya sa applications na nagre-require ng continuous updates and real-time updates such as live chat or online gaming. Next slide, please. To simplify API Gateway, ito yung input, process, and output niya. So, ang input ng API Gateway natin is yung mga HTTP request natin galing sa front end, galing sa client side. And ang ginagawa ni API Gateway is niraroute niya tong HTTP request papunta sa back-end services na kailangan natin. And for this study session, ang gagamitin natin dito is yung Lambda and DynamoDB, pero later ko na yun na-explain. Ito yung IPO ng API Gateway. Once na nabigay niya na yung request na to papunta kay backend at nabalik na yung kailangan na output niya, iraroute niya to pabalik sa front end. And ito na yung mga HTTP responses natin. So, ganun lang ginagawa ni API Gateway. And let's move on to our computing service, which is Lambda. So, Lambda naman, it is an event-driven compute service that executes code in response to events. Ang ginagawa lang nito, sa Lambda, pwede tayong maglagay ng sarili nating code. Yun yung nagiging Lambda functions natin. So, kung alam natin yung function sa coding, hindi porke niran mo yung isang application, automatic lahat ng functions magre-execute na or magra-run na, di ba? Kailangan tinatawag siya based sa event na magti-trigger sa kanya or magda-drive sa kanya para mag-execute. Yung mga events na sinasabi dito, yan yung request kanina galing sa API Gateway. So, yun yung event na nagda-drive para mag-trigger ng specific Lambda functions. Yung users natin, as I have said, yung code nila, dito nila nilalagay sa Lambda, and ang nagiging tawag sa kanila is yung Lambda functions. And si Lambda yung isa sa primary services ng AWS, lalo pagdating sa pagbibigay ng serverless technology natin. Kasi nga, siya na yung bahala sa pagmamanage ng servers and pagpo-provision ng servers natin. Instead na tayo mismo yung magmamanage nito. Parang sasabihin lang natin kung anong kailangan gawin and si Lambda na yung bahalang mag-allocate ng resources depende sa kailangan ng code natin or ng mga Lambda functions natin. Okay? So next, yung IPO ng Lambda. Ano ba to? Yung input ng Lambda, as I have said earlier, is yung events, which are the HTTP request na galing kay API Gateway, na galing din dun sa front end. So, ayan, kay Lambda, ang input niya is events. Ano yung process niya? Yung pag-execute lang mismo ng code. Yung Lambda functions na sinabi ko kanina, which is inserted or in-input mismo ng user na gumagamit ng Lambda. Ano yung magiging output niya? Depende na yun sa code na nilagay ni user. So, basically, kay Lambda tayo maglalagay ng code and as I have read, iba't ibang programming languages din yung kayang i-handle ni Lambda and I don't have the exact list pero yun, may list siya kung ano yung kaya nang i-handle na programming languages. Kung ano yung compatible sa kanya. So, basically, that's the IPO of our AWS Lambda. And next slide, please. Ano yung benefits ng Lambda? Nagiging beneficial siya pagdating sa serverless technology kasi hindi na natin kailangan mag-manage ng server. Siya na bahala, depende sa Lambda functions natin. Siya na bahala mag-allocate ng resources. Meron na rin siyang automatic scaling na depende nga sa kailangan ng Lambda functions natin. Kung kailangan ng mas maraming resources, kung mas mabigat, si Lambda na bahala doon. And doon na rin nakabase yung pagpresyo ni AWS. So, it's pay-as-you-go pricing. Kung mas marami ka nagamit na resources, mas mahal yung babayaran mo. Kung onti lang, either free tier or mas mababang pricing yung mabibigay sa'yo. And now, let's move on to our database service, which is DynamoDB. So, DynamoDB is a fully managed NoSQL database service. Sa pagkakaalam natin, yung traditional SQL databases natin or structured query language databases natin, ang hinahandle niya is structured data lang. Anong ibig sabihin nito? These relational databases, naka-tabular form siya. And yung rows and columns niya fixed na, and hindi siya dynamic, kumbaga, hindi siya flexible. Yung NoSQL database, ang ibig sabihin yan, not only SQL. Kaya niyang mag-handle ng unstructured data. Non-relational siya, which means hindi fix yung rows and columns niya. And flexible siya sa pag-store ng iba't ibang klase ng data models or data types, such as key value pairs, documents, graphs, wide column stores, and etc. So, yung DynamoDB, NoSQL siya na key value store. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito, yung key, may sarili siyang unique identifier para sa mga tables or data models under nun. So, ang benefit nito, nagiging flexible siya depende sa data na finifeed sa kanya. And let's move on to the IPO of DynamoDB for tonight's study session. So, ang IPO niya, ang input niya is yung mga request. Specifically, yung mga CRUD request na nanggaling sa front-end to API to Lambda, papunta kay DynamoDB. Yung CRUD request, ulitin ko lang, sila yung create, read, update, and delete request galing sa mga nauna nating services. And yung magiging process niya, siya na bahala sa data storage and retrieval. Kung galing sa request is kailangan mag-store ng data or kailangan mag-read, mag-write ng data, kay DynamoDB nangyayari yun. Ang magiging output niya lang, kung may hininging data galing sa request na to, syempre ang output niya is yung data na yun. Or kung may minodify na data, yun yung magiging output niya. Okay. And next. Okay. Let's move on na sa talk ni Mon, which is about serverless computing.
So, hello. So, nabanggit kanina ni CK yung serverless, yung gist nun. So, pero ngayon, i-expound ko kung ano ba yung serverless computing. Ang serverless computing, again, nabanggit ni CK, it doesn't mean na there are no physical servers being used. Somewhere out there in the world, kung anumang region ginagamit natin sa AWS, halimbawa Singapore, andun nakastore yung kung anumang ginagamit nating serverless. So, for example, Lambda. Yung Lambda function natin, nakastore siya somewhere physically, yung electronic bit niya, nakastore sa Singapore. So, review muna tayo. Ano ba ang servers? So, servers are basically computers. So, meron tayong motherboard, meron tayong CPU, meron tayong RAM, and meron tayong SSD. Yung term na supercomputers can be also called sa servers. Since servers are powerful computers, they are capable of many things, and they are usually structured also. So, sa isang server or isang computer na server, hindi lang isang operating system ang pwede nating i-run. So, there are multiple operating systems and it falls under virtualization, which I will not expound on today. Pero that's the gist of it. Virtualization allowed the cloud services we have today, cloud computing and serverless computing. So, kung kita nyo itong AMD Threadripper Pro. So, since supercomputer nga siya, so we have 96 cores dito. So, ang powerful ng servers natin. So, hindi lang kasi nga isang operating system ang kaya niyang i-run. So, bigay tayo example. Yung laptop nyo, since nabanggit ko kanina, servers are basically computers. Yung laptop nyo or yung PC nyo, they can also be servers. So, kung may home office kayo, tapos may parang uh, printers kayo na malayo dun sa computer nyo, you can set it up para maging printer server yung computer nyo para makapag-print lahat sa printer na yun. Another example is kapag magma-Minecraft kayo. So, when you host a Minecraft server in your device, it acts as a server. So, move on tayo sa ating example. So, ang napili ko example for servers are gaming servers. So, when we play games like competitive video games such as Counter-Strike, Dota 2, League of Legends, and Valorant, so we all are in a single server. So, all of your teammates and all of your enemies nasa isang server kayo. You're all in a single server so that you are able to interact with them. Because gaming servers act as a central hub sa ating information sa lahat ng nangyayari sa game. The position of your enemies, your teammates, every action, every information, even the stats which can be contained in a database. So, this ensures na everyone sees real time, yung like synchronous. So, kapag may lag, it comes with latency. So, in reality, hindi talaga sabay-sabay. But with minimal latency, we are able to synchronize with each other. So, balik tayo sa topic ng serverless. So, again, nabanggit ko na serverless computing actually uses physical server. Your file is stored out there in the world, in the server you are using. Now, let's enhance the discussion sa AWS or AWS. So, to further explain sa serverless computing natin, it is a cloud computing execution model where the cloud provider dynamically provides the resources and the allocation of the computing resources. So basically, you as the developer don't have to manage the resources of a server. So ano ba yung resources sa server? It's the operating system, the hardware you are going to use. So gaano kalaki yung memory, gaano ka-powerful yung CPU, gaano kalaki yung storage. So, hindi mo na kailangan isipin yun. You don't have to think of that when you are using serverless computing services ng AWS. But does it apply to every AWS service? No, because we have AWS services that are infrastructure as a service, which papakita ko later. But now, ayun nga, again, AWS, if you are using a serverless service, you are interacting with the AWS platform and not directly with the server. AWS is the one responsible to interact with the server to give you the resources you need. So, if mag-run ka ng Lambda code, Lambda function, si AWS yung usually mag-handle that given na sinetup mo yung tamang integration. So, move on tayo sa serverful. So, ito yung sophisticated term para sa opposite or antonym ng serverless. But basically, serverful is the traditional server interaction. So, the difference is that in serverful, you interact directly with the server. So, it could be that you have a server sa garage nyo when you're hosting your digital commerce, or the server is in the data center of your company. But in our case, the server is managed by AWS. So we are renting the server from AWS, and it is usually involved with the service of Amazon EC2. So in EC2, you rent virtual machines or virtual servers so that you are able to manage and provision all the resources. So meron tayong activity dati, yung Amazon Light Sale. We used there a instance So we used a online, a cloud server. So we interacted directly with the server. We managed kung gaano ka-powerful yung CPU, how many cores, what is the size of the memory, what is the size of the storage. So that is where we manage and provision the resources, and we interact directly with the server. So that is Amazon EC2, and there are also other services that utilizes Amazon instances, virtual servers. So here are the equivalents. So para mas maintindihan natin, here are the equivalents if like iharap-harap natin yung each server or each service na gagamitin na. So for serverless, we are going to use nga API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. So kung equivalent natin sila sa server full. So halimbawa we are using Python. So we are gonna use Flask. Nagamit na natin to in the last API activity we have done. So we are gonna use the Flask framework instead of API. So ito yung manage ng routing sa client at sa server. So and yung code natin is i-run natin sa Python. Although si Lambda, may kita nyo later, it also uses Python, but basically our code, tayo yung magmamanage how it runs sa ating server. So halimbawa, you need to extract the executable, or there's a script. You have a script that when you run the Python code, which then interacts with the whole system. And yung equivalent ng DynamoDB natin is basically any database service. But in this case, my example is MySQL. So I think almost everyone is familiar with all of these. So basically, that is the equivalence ng ating different services sa AWS for serverless and for your traditional server full management. So, bakit tayo gumagamit ng either one? So, dito mas may freedom tayo sa server full. Although sa serverless, mas convenient, it's usually limited. Your usage, your options, your parameters are limited and all controlled by AWS. But let's move on sa mga applications. So there are different applications for serverless computing. So we have web applications and APIs, mobile backends, Internet of Things, and machine learning. So aside from these, marami pang ibang example. But I would like to expound on one example for web applications and APIs. So we have here Netflix. So Netflix is widely known to use AWS as its backend service. So, kapag when a new video file is uploaded to the Netflix storage, which uses Amazon S3. So, let's assume na Amazon S3 ang gamit nila. So, we have here a video. So, halimbawa, from Squid Game. So, the company of Squid Game uploaded the final copy of their series to the Netflix S3. Now, may matitrigger na event. So, earlier nabanggit ni CK that Lambda is triggered by usually yung may trigger for the code to run. But it is routed through API Gateway. So, kapag may na-upload na video, so may matitrigger na event, nire-route siya ni API Gateway, then the Lambda function will be executed. So, ano yung in-execute ni Lambda function here? Since we stream Netflix in almost hundreds of different devices, so we have desktop, we have iPad, we have smartphones. There are different underlying computer architecture sa kada device na yun. So, hindi porket MP4 to, pwede na siya mapanood ng lahat. Yung in-upload ni Squid Game. So, for some devices, requires about HVC. So if that's the requirement for their video encoding, then Lambda is the one responsible to convert that. So pag na-convert na, ibabalik na nila through API Gateway yung other videos for deployment sa mismong Netflix. So that we are able to watch in different platforms and devices. So for mobile backend, this one is similar to our This one will be similar to our demonstration later. So there will be a form, and basically in a form we have a front end and we have a button. So when you click the button, that will be the trigger for our API Gateway and Lambda function. So it will bring the inputs to the database. And if you have an authentication function, then the Lambda will be the one responsible for that. So if you are authenticated, like so again Lambda nga yung responsible, but it will still interact. It will read and write to the database. So it will read if ito ba talaga yung email and password niya. So if that's the case, then the authentication will go through. So for IoT, it's usually will involve with a lot of data. So it's the serverless function here is like the processing of the several data from the various real-time monitoring IoT devices. So we will not go further beyond sa kung paano ba nagana to for IoT and machine learning. For machine learning naman, serverless can be used to train the machine learning models, especially for parallel tasks. So sabay-sabay at one time. And then the actual model, if it will now used to run inference on predictions and classifications, so serverless function can be used, but it is not in the scope of this discussion. So pero gusto ko lang din banggitin na it can be applied in such. So let's move on. So for the architecture that we are going to use for this activity, but this is not only used in our activity. Actually, yung architecture na to, ito yung pinaka-common na form sa paggamit ng serverless services ng AWS. So, pakita ko lang sa inyo. Here. So, pag nag-search ka ng AWS serverless architectures, actually, ayun yung unang lalabas. It's always API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. So, it's used in various use cases. So, ito yung nakita kong medyo mas complicated but easy to understand na architecture. So, we have here a like e-commerce application. So, the API Gateway is single but there are clusters of Lambda and DynamoDB. Kasi nga, we have here the product, the basket, and the ordering. These three are different, but they can use the same underlying architecture for it to work para magkaroon ng checkout and magkaroon ng queuing. So, ayun. So, iba-iba kasi yung code dyan and iba-iba rin yung data na sinastore. So, eto pa, isa pa example. So, just basic API calls over HTTPS. It's always API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB. But it is not limited to that. So, marami pa namang iba. But it is usually these ones na involved. Also, S3 bucket if may storage involved. So, let's move on. I think demonstration time na. So, okay pa ba kayo guys? Salita naman kayo dyan.
Yippee!
Yes!
Okay, let's go. So, for our demonstration, so, ipapublic ko na to. Wait lang. Actually, hindi na. Later na lang. Pero, here, if kaya nyo makasabay, try nyo sabayan. And, I'll try to give like leeway time para makasabay tayo. Since mayroon pa tayo namang halos more than 40 minutes. So I'll take it slow and try to explain as much as I can kung ano ba yung gist ng ating demo. But again, we will use the following architecture.
Hello?
Hello.
Before we continue pala, babanggitin ko lang, di ba meron tayong 5 study sessions for the Tech Unlock series under cloud infrastructure. So, kada study session na to, may mga activity tayo na gagawin. And sa dulo, of course, meron tayong forms na pwedeng pasahan ng activities na to. Kapag na-complete nyo per study session and every activity per study session, pwede kayong magkaroon ng badge or ng certificate. Kada study session yon. So, kung natapos nyo 5, meron kayong 5. Pero, kung na-complete nyo yung 5 talaga na yon, meron pang isang additional na certificate, which means na na-complete nyo nga yung 5 yun. So, overall, pwede kayong magkaroon ng 6 badges or certificates once na ma-complete nyo lahat ng sessions and yung activities na kasama dito. So, ayun lang. Maganda yun kasi, syempre, ayun lang. Tuloy mo na. Go.
So ayun. Hopefully, yun nga, maki-take part kayo sa ating activity. And if kaya, gawin na natin ngayon lahat para wala na kayong problemahin sa mga free time nyo. So, set up ko lang yung stream ng ayos. So, ayan. So, ito yung activity. So, I think I need to make it public na para ma-access nyo yung codes. And this is send ko here sa open chat. So, ayan. So, paki-check muna if like accessible na siya. Send ko siya sa open chat. So, and if may naka-access na, sabi na lang. So, at this point, we can be more casual lang. Since like, parang chill lang naman talaga tayo dito. If may mga tanong kayo, like if nasunod kayo and may mga tanong kayo, tanong nyo lang agad bago tayo mag-move on. Or tanong nyo anytime. Pero baka hindi ako makapagbasa ng open chat. So, as much as possible, mag-open mic tayo if may mga questions. So, may naka-access na ba nung repository? Sinend ko sa open chat.
Accessible goods.
Okay. So, let's proceed na. Pero bago yun, I assume na meron tayong AWS account. So, for this case, kahit root account muna gamitin natin. Pero, recommended is IAM account siya. So, I think sa ibang time na lang. For now, kahit root account muna gamitin nyo. And if may nakaset up na kayong IAM accounts na may administrator access, yun yung gamitin nyo. Pero for now, yung iba, if hindi pa na nakaset up, root account. So, login muna tayo sa AWS accounts natin. So, I'll give like 2 minutes then bago mag-proceed. So, if wala pa pala kayong AWS account, try nyo na lang humabol later pag nag-start na ako. Yung mga steps naman dyan, ginawa kong as user-friendly, as beginner-friendly as possible din. And if may mga suggestions kayo, enter nyo lang sa open chat para, halimbawa, may screenshot na gusto kayo makita for step 4. Lagay nyo sa open chat. Di ko kasi nilagay puro screenshot since baka sumobrang haba. Yung iba naman dyan, obvious naman. So, like if nandito ka na sa screen ng Lambda, may kita mo agad yung mga buttons. So, naka 2 minutes na. May mga hindi pa ba naka-login or kaya nyo na sumunod? So, if may mga naka-login na, pasabi na lang if sino. So, sige, start na tayo. If nauna ako, check nyo na lang dito sa repository yung mga steps. So, basahin nyo maigi yung each step kasi baka may hindi naka-indicate lahat dito sa images. Parang guide lang talaga kung nasan may kita sa current UI ng AWS. Yung mga buttons. So, ayun. So, first step, navigate tayo sa IM. So, if wala siya dito sa recently visited nyo, search lang dito sa console, sa taas. Then, click nyo yung IM. Then, once nasa IM na kayo, sa left tab, let's navigate to roles. So, click nyo lang yung roles dito sa left tab. If wala kayo nakikita yung left tab, just click the 3 stacked lines here. And click roles. And then, under roles, you would like to click the create role button. So, create role. Then, once nandito ka na sa screen na to, select trusted entity type to AWS service and use case Lambda. So, AWS service and then Lambda. So, for this one, it just uses the AWS services na in our scope. Then, we will use Lambda. So, next. So, bakit tayo gumagawa ng role? So, this is for us to access although nasa root account ako ngayon, if like, nasa work environment kayo, this would not be the case. So, you will be using a account with more limited access. But again, for the sake of demo, gumamit muna tayo ng root account or like administrator account. So, since role lang naman to, search natin yung basic. So, if sinearch yung basic, lalabas yan is AWS Lambda basic execution rule. So, you need to check this so that we will be able to ito. May description naman dito but it's basically used to ayun. Ito yung ina-allow niya talaga. So, pwede tayo mag-create ng log group, log stream, and put log events sa ating CloudWatch if i-expand natin to. And then for the next policy na i-enable natin, so search lang Dynamo. So for now, we will give it full access para walang implication sa ating Pero again, sa actual work environments, you would only using halimbawa, you only need read access. So yun lang yung need nyo So marami yan since full access nga. And hindi lang siya under sa DynamoDB. So yung interactions niya rin sa iba-ibang services yung binibigay nating access. So once na-check nyo na yung both na services na yon, so it should show 2 out of this. So may 2 selected na kayo. You can now proceed to next. So for the role name, so yung mga names na i-enter natin dito, sundan nyo lang yung yung nasa GitHub. Kasi based on my experience, like if may mga symbols kang in-enter like hyphen or dash, hindi lahat ng services basta-basta ina-accept to. So parang may implication siya sa code. So for now, for the role, pwede tayo mag dash show enter admin dash lambda. And then scroll down lang. So dapat dito makita nyo you should see here na the policies you gave the role. So create role. So once your role has been created, verify nyo lang. It should be displayed here sa roles. And then now we can move on to the Lambda itself. So let's go to Lambda. So nasa Lambda na tayo and excuse me. Click nyo lang yung create function. So that since we're gonna make a Lambda function. So for everything else, keep it default lang unless mentioned sa instruction. Kasi I assume na same lang naman yung default settings. So for our function name, just enter demo function. And nabanggit earlier ni CK na Lambda can run different programming languages. So ito yung soft list ng pwede mo i-run sa Lambda. So you can run Node.js, Java 21, and Python 3.13 for the latest versions. And also .NET 8 para sa C#, PowerShell, CLI, Ruby 3.3, and Amazon Linux 2022. But for our experiment, since recently pa lang tong 3.13 ni Python. So let's use 3.12 sa Python. And then for the architecture, select times 86 64-bit. So AWS naman yung mag-handle ng provisioning ng resources. So let's assume na 86_64 yung niya lagi. So instruction set lang naman to. So I think ARM for smaller applications siya. And yung AWS naman yung mag-handle again nung kung saang server niya ilalagay yung ating Lambda function. So now we expand the default execution role. And we want to use the existing role since we already made a role earlier. So just use an existing role and then automatically makita nyo dapat dito si admin Lambda. Otherwise, maybe may mali kayong nagawa sa pag-assign ng policy or di nyo lang na-select yung policy. So balikan nyo lang yung steps dito sa policies. Also, bagitin ko lang, galing din naman to sa YouTube yung project na to. So makikita nyo yung link dito if like need yung help. Pero yung UI na ginamit niya is much older. So this is like updated version for the activity. So now let us create our function. So dito sa function, ayan, makita nyo meron tayong Visual Studio Code here. So if nakita nyo, just click accept. Since we will upload a code anyway na existing na. So this is the UI of the Lambda function. So, in the code tab, makita dito may VS Code na UI. I think dati iba pa yung nakalagay dyan. Now let's move on. So, dito sa repository, in this repository, select the file demo function.zip and then click the download icon on the right side. So, balik lang tayo sa main branch ng repository. And then, again, click nyo yung demo function.zip and download the raw file. So, save nyo lang siya wherever you want. So, nakita nyo, nakasave na siya here. So, hindi ko na siya isa-save. Pero, I guess, let's save it in another folder. Lagyan natin sa desktop. So, there. I downloaded it. We have a reason kung bakit nilagay ko na yung zip instead na i-download nyo yung code isa-isa. So, kasi pag dinownload mo siya here sa GitHub, gumagawa pa siyang another folder inside the zip folder. So, nagkakaroon ng complications yan dito sa Lambda. Kaya, I just use this para lang smooth and seamless yung maging activity. Pero in reality, hindi laging ganito yung magiging case. So, bago tayo mag-move on, I'd like to explain the code din. Pero, dito na lang tayo sa Visual Studio Code. So, the next step is to upload the zip file. So, just click upload here. And then, search for the demo function. So, sa desktop ko sinave yung akin. So, just open demo function.zip and then save. So, it will automatically extract the zip file and its contents here. And it should have the same name as the function name here. So, may mahalaga yun since baka magkaroon ng error since magkaiba yung naming nyo here sa actual name ng Lambda. So, explain ko lang yung code. So, I don't know if kita nyo. Try ko i-zoom in. So, ayan. So, quick explanation lang sa code. Actually, hindi quick kasi ito yung essence ng Lambda natin. So, kung ano yung nangyayari sa application natin, it's Lambda has the essence. So, it also handles the API and the interaction with DynamoDB. So, here we just imported 3 modules. So, JSON, since dealing with REST API, we really need the JSON formatting. So, kahit here we have JSON formatting. So, this is an example of JSON formatting, if not JSON formatting itself. So, it's similar to a dictionary sa Python. So, Boto3, it's basically to interact like with Amazon functions. And then, we have here the Lambda handler. So, kanina, if you saw earlier, we already have a Lambda handler by default. But here, we modified the code to fit with our application. So, the entry point for the Lambda function, which gets triggered when an API gateway request is received, is handled here. So, this event object, so itong event object, it has 3 different elements. So, it's like similar, yung event object here is like similar to a list or an array. So, we have here the HTTP method, query string parameters, and the body. And lahat to galing kay AWS. Yung nandito sa event. Well, not AWS lang. It's also handled, yung API natin, may kita nyo mamaya. Yung connection ng lahat-lahat. So, ayan. We have here the... So, habang na-explain akong code, if may nagawa and may nahabol, gawin nyo lang. So, ayan. So, we have try. So, if hindi pa kayo familiar dito, basically, if may error, ito yung magra-run. status code 500, if di rin kayo familiar, it's an error status from the REST API. So, diniscuss rin to sa last event about API. So itatry niya muna, and if hindi niya to, if may error, dito siya mapupunta, basically. So, here we declare a variable myPage. So, we call the page router. So, yung page router, hindi to galing sa AWS or something. Tayo yung nag-declare dito. So, our parameters are the HTTP method. So, it's either get, post, update, put, or delete, and the other parameters here. So, now let's move on to page router. So, pag ni-return si myPage, it calls page router. So, we have here page router now. And the input again is HTTP method, query string, and form body. So, ito yung from AWS. So, we have here two conditions. If we have the get and the post condition. So, if get yung method natin, i-open yung mismong yung main page. It opens the main page of the web application. So in this case, it opens contact us.html. So it opens it as an HTML file. I believe variable lang din to. And it reads it. So i-return niya yung front end. So it renders the whole HTML file in the endpoint mamaya. And dinadeclare siya na HTML here explicitly para i-render niya na as HTML. So that is the case if successful. And again, may error sa pag-get. I-return status code 500. So for the post, makita nyo later. Babalikan natin tong code later para i-explain yung interaction. So for the post, it calls the insert record. So punta naman natin sa insert record. Pero hindi ko na masyado to explain. Basically, it inserts the forms or the credentials and details you entered sa DynamoDB na database table natin. So, after niya i-open niya naman si success.html. So, it's basically the success page. Nothing much happens here. It's a success page. And then the return status code 200 meaning success. And then i-render niya din again as HTML. So, if error, status code 500. So, basically, that's it. Pero, kung isipin nyo, paano malalaman if get or post yung method? So, by default, get yung method dito sa event if i-open natin yung endpoint mamaya. So, punta natin sa HTML file. So, here sa HTML file, meron siyang CSS and meron siyang short script. Pero itong line na to yung pinakamahalaga dito. Ito yung nagde-determine, this line determines na magiging post yung method na i-return ni API if mag-click siya ng submit button. So, this one is the submit button. This line. And this one declares that this endpoint here will return a post method if the submit button is clicked. So, balikan na lang natin to later, yung code. And proceed tayo. So, after nyo i-upload yung zip file, and dapat makita nyo here yung HTML, all the codes. Let's now move on to DynamoDB. So, just search DynamoDB, and again, just click it. And if wala kayong makita, just click the 3 stack lines here. So, we'll navigate to tables. So, we'll just create a single table. Sobrang bilis lang. Demo table, yung name, and isa to sa mahalaga, yung partition key. Meaning ito yung magiging primary key ito yung magiging unique identifier nung kada entry sa table. So for in this case, yung email. Kasi possible, I think di naman possible na magkaroon ng same email. Given the different email services. Pero possible magkaroon ng same name. Kaya hindi name yung gagawin nating primary key. So we use email. So yun lang yun sa DynamoDB. Pwede na tayo create table here. So scroll lang kayo sa bottom, create table, and then just wait na maging active yung status before we move on. Para we are sure na na-create yung table without error. So okay pa ba kayo dyan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
May nasunod ba ng demo natin? Or sa own times nyo na lang? So I hope na hindi sobrang bilis. And then sabi ni Soki here, provide tayo ng IM accounts. Kasi mahalaga siya actually. Dapat talaga hindi ginagamit yung root account. But for medyo kinulang na rin ng time para i-discuss ko yun here. So ayun. Next time, set up natin yan. So, ayun. Let's move on. So, we have created the demo table. Active dapat yung lalabas. If hindi, balikan nyo lang. Unti lang naman to. So, supposedly wala masyadong maging errors dyan. So, after active na siya, navigate na tayo sa API Gateway. Type API Gateway. Tapos, we need to scroll down to find REST API. So here you can also use various API services. But here we'll use REST API. So click build. Then select new API. For API name, you have demo API. So if hindi ito naka-regional, just change it to regional. And then create API. Yun lang.
Mon,
Yes.
naka-record ka ba sa isang account mo?
Naka-record ako here actually.
Okay. Sige, thank you.
So yun, let's move on. So if hindi nyo kita yung create method, so puntahan nyo lang yung yung endpoint. So ito yung endpoint. Na-discuss na rin to in the previous event. And if like curious kayo kung ano yung discussion doon, may VODs naman tayo sa Facebook. If not, just reach out and we'll give you the link. So here we'll have to create a method. And then yung first method natin, nakita nyo sa code earlier. Get yung first method natin. So create method, then enter get, select get, and the integration type, we use Lambda. Lambda integration kasi nga yung gagamitin natin for our serverless application. And then, make sure to activate the Lambda proxy integration. And then, for the Lambda function, select nyo here. By default, yung region nyo naman yan. Kung saan kayo nag-work. But by default, ayun. Dapat yung kung saang region kayo gumawa ng Lambda function. So here, dito gumawa ng region, automatic na siya nakikita. And then that's it. Create method. The rest will not be handled in this activity. So create method. So once you create method, it should be displayed here. So makikita nyo here yung parang flowchart nga. Nakita rin natin earlier discuss ni CK. So, hindi lang get yung function yung method natin. So, we should create a new one. So, again, create nyo lang yung endpoint. Same endpoint, pero different methods. So, na-experience na naman natin yun. If hindi pa kayo familiar sa API, you can have same endpoint and different methods. So, create method, and then post, Lambda function, proxy integration, and then select lang ulit yung demo function. So, bago mag-next, pakita ko na yung screen na to. Pause lang muna tayo saglit. So, yun, let's move on. So, yun lang, create a method. So, if naguguluhan kayo, balikan nyo lang here. Di naman siya sobrang hirap. Since select nyo lang. So, after creating method, we can now deploy our API. Yun na yun. We can deploy our API. So, just click deploy pag nakagawa na kayo ng methods nyo. And make sure to create a new stage. And make it dev. So, bakit dev? If nakita nyo sa code earlier, yung endpoint na dineclare is dev dun sa HTML. So, it should have a stage name of dev. Kasi yun yung magiging endpoint natin sa API. So, deploy nyo lang to. And once you're here in the stages page, ito na. May kita na natin yung yung contact form natin. So, copy nyo lang to and paste it in a new tab. And here, you'll have your web application. So, if nagkaroon kayong errors na lumabas na JSON error here, make sure na you read every step. Usually sa naming nagkaka-issue or like may hindi lang na-activate na setting. So, if nagkaroon nga kayong error, ayun, balikan nyo lang. So, andito na tayo sa contact form natin. When you load the page up, the method is get. So, if babalikan natin yung code, so yan, ang method na dinedeclare ni API Gateway kay Lambda is get here sa HTTP method. And then, if ni-return niya nga get, and if HTTP method is get, i-open niya yung HTML file natin. And i-render niya sa page na to. So, the get method basically just renders the main page, the main web page ng ating web application. So, sige, type tayo ng dummy entries. For now, my name. Tapos type tayo ng hello world. So, ito yung entries natin. And if i-click yung submit, pero bago ko i-click, show natin yung code here. Yung HTML. So, etong line na to yan. So, we have here the \dev endpoint. So, ito yon. Andito tayo ngayon. And, nasa forms tayo. And if declare mo siya ng post yung method sa forms na to. And, you submit it. So, pag kinik na natin yung submit, it will now create a post request sa API natin. And then, if babalikan natin yung isa pang code, the Python code naman, magiging post si HTML request. And, i-call niya na yung insert record. So, supposedly, dapat may makita tayo dito, di ba? Sa DynamoDB natin na sinetup natin earlier. So, here, nirender niya yung success.html. Ito yon. This is that page. And now, we just need to verify if napunta nga siya sa ating DynamoDB. So, punta kayo sa DynamoDB. And just go to tables. Select the table you created earlier. And explore table items. So, may times na hindi agad ito maglo-load. If hindi siya mag-load, just refresh. Click tables again. And then, ayun, explore table items. So, ayun. We have here our first entry. So, yung tinype ko earlier, my name, surname, yung email which became the primary key that we set in DynamoDB, and then hello world, yung message. So, sige, try ulit tayo. So, if you try here, F5, may kita nyo here na magkakaroon lang na repetition for the entered yung mga information na in-enter natin earlier. Because it's the same endpoint and nire-read siya ni HTML yung script ni-read as another post request. So if continue yan, magkakaroon tayo ng duplication error. Kasi bawal nga magkaroon ng duplicate primary key sa ating DynamoDB since our email was declared the primary key. So if you just refresh here sa address bar. Hindi ko alam kung ano yung implications ng browser ko sa browser nyo, pero ganun yung case sa akin. If magdo-duplicate, just refresh it or just enter new tab and enter. And ayun. So sige, type natin pangalan ni CK sa another entry. Tapos ayan, message lang, submit. So we will submit a post request. And ayan, once successful, it should render here. Otherwise, magkakaroon kayo ng error here if hindi successful. Papakita naman yan. So if hindi ito lumabas, you have an error. So yun, refresh lang natin to. And ayun, we have here the 2 entries now. So pag ginawa niyo yung activity, make sure to screenshot yung entries nyo. So kung ano man yung naging entries nyo here, screenshot nyo muna bago nyo i-submit. And then pagka-submit nyo, depende kung ilang screenshots, pero at least 2 siguro. So 2 dummy entries, screenshot the 2 contact forms. And then screenshot here yung return ng table. Yung whole page na lang i-screenshot nyo. Dapat kita rin tong account name nyo. So nasa instructions naman yan. Sa last part, yung testing. So make sure to screenshot your entries before clicking submit. And then screenshot the page. Hindi ganito, hindi lang ganyan. Screenshot the whole page. So ayun. So tapos na tayo. So once you are finished with this activity and obtain the screenshots, delete all the created services in Lambda, DynamoDB, and API Gateway to avoid incurring costs. So pakita ko lang din how to delete. So siguro unahin natin sa DynamoDB. So, pag DynamoDB, ganito lang. Select nyo lang and delete. So, iwasan kasi nating ma-charge sa cost. And, ito lang yung select nyo here. Wag na to. So, wait nyo lang ma-delete. And then, move on na kayo sa other services. So, medyo matagal lang siya. Ayan. So, delete na, lalabas naman na 0 na. Punta naman tayo sa API Gateway. Delete natin yung API. So, just select here again and delete. Then, confirm. So, ayan. Successfully deleted. You can double check naman. Pero, pag ni-refresh mo to, wala na lalabas. And then, sa Lambda. Just delete the function. So, ayun, na-delete na natin lahat. Yung sa IM, optional na yung pag-delete doon. Kasi generally, wala ka talaga masyadong storage na nagamit dito. Pero for the sake of the activity, sige, delete na din natin. So, since gagamitin lang natin yung free tier ni AWS, let's just delete the services we use. So, yun lang. Thank you for tuning in sa ating activity. If may tanong kayo, just chat sa GC or PM nyo lang ako. Sa Discord or sa Messenger. If may tanong kayo. You can also email me. If you want. Nasa GitHub ko rin naman yung email. So, balik na tayo sa ating presentation. Pero bago yun, kumusta muna ulit lahat? May sumunod ba sa ating demo? And if meron, ano yung mga na-encounter na issues, and if wala, successful ba? So yun, kumusta muna tayo dyan? Casual muna. Yeah. So ayun. Nagkaroon ng error si Jerome. in success. So, yeah. So, ano yan, pag nagka-error, chat na lang. Or gusto nyo, like, discuss tayo, sige, ano ba error yung na-encounter. May 5 minutes pa naman. All goods na. Okay, sige. So, ayun. I think photo op na yung next. So, photo op muna. So, if you have cameras, just turn it on. And, photo op tayo. Tapos pag wala, react na lang.
On cam kayo.
Yun. Yun, no?
Nakahubad ba yung captain?
Captain, ipopost natin to, Captain.
Ay, yung ano na lang, no, ako na lang kasama niyo.
Yun, doon come kayo, guys. Sige.
Sana yung mga tropa natin. Hindi na nag-on cam.
Sige. Screenshot ko na. Ready
Hi,
na lang
go.
yung mga naka-on cam. Nakain pa si Josh eh. Ayan. Sige, okay na. Before we end, wait lang. So yun, before we end, so balikan na lang yung Tech Unlock series. So we'll have a series of events, pero hindi naman siya, it won't be weekly. So the next event actually won't be from our department, from the cloud department. But again, we'll have this series of events, and I hope na everyone will still attend, and opportunity din to upskill. And if may tanong and anything na pwede natin pag-usapan, we can talk about it in these events. And ayun, so again, the next one would be get started, setting up a RDS. So that would be held by CK, pati itong CloudWatch and CloudTrail. And these local stack and Terraform will be discussed by me again. It won't be too soon naman because our next event is actually by Christian Comia or CJ.
Hey.
So, look forward yan. Actually, this Saturday na. And I hope maka-attend din kayo. Chill-chill lang naman to since more on the innovation office lang. So, we can be casual din if you guys want. But again, yun nga, opportunity to learn more. So, earlier nakita nyo, pinakita ko yung HTML code. And CJ will be the one to discuss more on that. So, ayun. So, that's it. Thank you everyone for attending. And have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you po.